All right, what is up, gamers and historians and history buffs and laymen's? Welcome back to another Let's Play slash World War II discussion of Eastfront 2, the board game, as well as a look of Eastfront, the actual conflict that would actually be the Eastern Front. So my last video, a lot of ranting, a lot of interesting stuff about the Eastern Front at large, value of history, and the overall value of trying to unpack what the heck happened in this campaign and in this conflict as a whole between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. I think this video I'm going to spend a little less time doing my good old rants, and I think this time we're actually going to jump more into the gameplay. But I really hope you guys enjoyed the last video, you guys and gals both. And without further ado, I think we're going to continue on with the campaign. This time we're playing as the German side. Last turn was really a dedicated time for the Soviets. Now we're going to continue on as the Axis and continue on with Operation Barbarossa. So already the last turn was quite a stunning victory by the German Wehrmacht. They definitely did a number on the Soviets. The Soviets have fallen back to some pretty good defensive lines. We were playing the Soviets earlier, and we went with a much more conservative strategic defense with a lot of Soviet units being clustered here along the Dnieper River. This is effectively the Western Front. And then we also have cluttered and clustered Soviet armies here in the north with some units in Estonia. Our intelligence does tell us that there is a Soviet Baltic front right there near the Gulf of Finland, near Tallinn, trying to evacuate. And then we also have the Leningrad front here as well. I believe it was located at Volkhov, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, we have the Soviet defense around Leningrad being a priority, and of course, here along the Dnieper River in the central sector. Minsk has been abandoned by the Soviets, and Riga was also abandoned. So we did gain one production point from taking Minsk, but we will not gain a second point from Riga because there is no rail line that is actually moving from Riga to the German industrial centers further west. What else can we say? Well, the operations in the south went extremely well. We were able to devastate Soviet units at Luk and Lvov, opening the southern eastern Poland corridor towards the Ukraine. The road to Kiev is now open. We also encircled some Soviet forces right along the border here, Hungarian-Russian border, or more realistically, Hungarian-Soviet border is a better description. And then what else can we say? The Soviets did some adjustments here, but they've effectively given us the opportunity to push further into Soviet territory. Actually, it was originally Romanian territory in 1939, but the Soviets took it as part of their process to annex parts of Eastern Germany into the Soviet sphere of influence. This was happening basically around the same time frame that we saw the splitting up of Poland as well as the Winter War. So this was kind of part of the agreements and negotiation between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, with Hitler and Stalin basically working together to find some kind of compromise in Eastern Europe. So that was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. I believe Molotov and Ribbentrop both were the ambassadors of each respective country. We can do a quick Wikipedia search and just confirm that. Molotov Ribbentrop Pact, but essentially it was the non-aggression pact between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. And this was Hitler's effort to create somewhat of a buffer zone in their efforts to expand. And the Third Reich, Hitler wanted peace in the East, at least enough time for him to deal with the issues of the West. Or another way to look at it was that Hitler wasn't simply ready to invade the Soviet Union yet, so he'd rather create a peace treaty between him and his major opponent than actually fight a war when they weren't ready, when Nazi Germany wasn't ready for a war. And so, it's actually the German foreign minister, Joachim von Ribbentrop, and then also the Soviet foreign minister, Vyacheslav Molotov, both of whom were pretty much the main two organizers of the pact between Moscow, and Berlin at the time. So very important agreement. Of course, this was the really major predecessor to Operation Barbarossa. And one of the most amazing things about Operation Barbarossa has to be the level of surprise that the German Wehrmacht had over the Soviet army. And one has to wonder, why exactly was the Soviet Union so unprepared for a German invasion? And there's a lot to unpack here, but it wasn't simply just Nazi Germany and Nazi German leadership that was making blunders throughout World War II. Arguably one of the biggest blunders by the Allied coalition was Stalin's insistence on not believing the rumors of a Axis invasion, or better yet, of a German invasion on the Soviet Union. And despite having a very powerful intelligence community within the Soviet Union that was actually able to determine quite early on that the Nazis were indeed preparing and massing their forces on the border, and all of the military intelligence was suggesting that some kind of operation was going to happen. Stalin didn't really act as aggressively as he could have to prepare for a potential invasion, for fear of creating tensions between him and his current ally, Adolf Hitler. And he didn't want to create any disturbances along the border, which would then start provoking the possibility of war. So in some ironic turn of events, by doing everything he can so that his army wouldn't be necessarily in the most favorable strategic position, by mobilizing his forces, he actually made his army less prepared for what was soon to be a powerful German invasion. And all of that was in an effort to avoid a war with Germany. And instead, they ended up getting arguably one of the most devastating German assaults of the war, and arguably one of the most devastating invasions of military history. And as we saw in our game, the initial onset of Operation Barbarossa has been quite deadly, to say the least. I mean, already, obviously, the Soviets have been able to build some new units, but already about 5 to 6 Soviet units, about half army, the other half corps, including an entire Soviet front, the Ukrainian front, were destroyed in the initial stages of Barbarossa. And to make matters worse, the Soviets still have several additional units that are cut off. And I guess to make the situation even worse is the fact that the Stalin line effectively is dissolved, and even more than that, the Soviet forces are not in the best of shape for any future battles. So overall, I got to say that that the surprise attack on the Soviet Union has to actually be one of the biggest successes by Adolf Hitler in the war, because this is still somewhat of a disputed conversation. And I don't think anyone really has a clear answer on this. But at least I remember watching some videos by TIK, and not to give him all the credits, but he made a really fascinating video on, talking about how unprepared the Soviet Union was for a conflict with Nazi Germany in 1941. And he also talked a lot about how the Allies didn't even realize that Nazi Germany was necessarily going to strike the Soviet Union. No one really knew exactly when Adolf Hitler was going to attack the Soviet Union, if at all. And there was British intelligence that actually did suggest that there was the possibility of an attack. And I know that that was some of the information that Stalin received, that he received from the British. And it actually only reinforced his distrust in the situation, because he refused to believe any of the information that was coming to him in some kind of form of government conspiracy or world conspiracy, in which everybody was kind of out to get him, and he didn't trust anybody. And so this is obviously an oversimplification, and this is obviously my perspective on the subject, but it is fascinating to think that the largest military invasion of human history, at least by manpower goes, which is Barbarossa, Operation Barbarossa, was an operation that still had the advantages of surprise attack. You would think that an invasion of such a scale would give the enemy some kind of clue that the attack was coming, but a lot of people argue that the Soviet high command simply wasn't aware. Additionally, I've also heard that, you know, even by the time that Stalin did realize that the attack was coming, it was already too late. You know, this was, I believe, a few days or a few months, or better yet, a few weeks leading up to Barbarossa. By the time Stalin was recognizing the threat, you know, he did begin to mobilize some units. By the time that happened, it was simply too late. So there's the argument to be made that maybe the historical setup of Operation Barbarossa, from both point of views, was one in which the Soviets were as ready as they really could have been. So there's still kind of a debate and controversy as far as that goes. I think there's still information and documents that have to be tapped into in order to really figure out what was the thinking of the time. But it is fascinating to think that arguably one of the most um, intelligence experience forces in military history, which was the Soviet Army, was least prepared for such a massive invasion, the largest invasion recorded to date. So I find that to be a very fascinating subject. Just the fact that, despite all the intelligence, it was still a surprise attack. And so some people will give credit to Adolf Hitler for convincing the world that most of the efforts by Nazi Germany was a war against the British Empire. And there were kind of deception maneuvers being done, such as sending over paratrooper units into, I believe it was the Low Countries, having excuse me, Luftwaffe air units still stationed in the West, having German units stationed in the West, suggesting that the invasion of Britain was still a real possibility, even though by late 1940, the main focus by the German high command was now switched to the East and the invasion of the Soviet Union. So I really want to just share all that. I think it's a fascinating subject material, definitely one that deserves more attention. Maybe in the future, I'll dedicate some unique videos to that conversation. But I think I have to read a little bit more. I got to spend more time doing some research. Don't mind the voice crack if you can even hear it. But I just really want to get that out of the way and just kind of get a little bit of a history lesson into this video. So with that said, we're going to continue on with Operation Barbarossa. We're now entering the next phase of Barbarossa. Phase 1 was pretty much breach the border. And the Germans did an outstanding job of that. Not only did they breach the Soviet lines, but they now have penetrated several hundreds of miles into Soviet territory. The next phase now is to expand the invasion and actually start going for the real targets. Keep in mind that Operation Barbarossa is an extremely ambitious plan. The plan is to knock the Soviet Union out in 4 months. We've only seen 1 week of combat, and the fighting seems far from finished, at least on the map. Soviets have strong units near Leningrad, so it's going to be a bit of a cluster of battles in order for Leningrad to be taken. Soviets are withdrawing some of their strongest units, and right now they are in some pretty good positions, I must say, especially here in the center. The Western Front looks like it's dug in nice across the eastern banks of the Dnieper River, and then further south, the Soviets have relatively stable lines as well. We know that the Soviet Southern HQ is stationed right there, and so I definitely want to think of a plan of possibly destroying that or taking that. I'm not really sure what the Germans should do, not yet at least, but we do know that the goal is to pretty much get as much momentum as we can to the east. And I think rather than focusing on destroying the Soviet army directly, I think we should focus on the strategic geography. And I may have been actually one of the strategic problems that the German army had throughout Operation Barbarossa was the simple fact that they did not know how to destroy the Soviet army or how to destroy the Soviet Union. And which of the two, or better way to put it would be, are destroying either objective the same? And what I mean by that is destroying the Soviet army the equivalent of destroying the Soviet Union? And this is something that I think the Blitzkrieg or Bewegungskrieg, Schwerpunkt, there's a lot of names for basically the Wehrmacht military operational thinking for the army, which was a focus on destroying the enemy armies first and foremost. And we saw that the Battle of France, the battle, or better yet, the invasion of Poland, and pretty much every other major army operation by the German Wehrmacht was one that was described as a series of operations dedicated towards flanking, outmaneuvering, encircling, and destroying enemy forces, as well as overrunning their capitals. And we saw this all throughout the campaigns of 1939 to 1940 and 41. Germany was able to conquer all of mainland Europe through these series of operations, some of them even involving naval and amphibious and air invasions, paratrooper invasions, things like the invasion of Denmark and Norway. As far as paratroopers go, the invasion through Belgium, as well as the Battle of Crete, all involved combined arms or combined force operations. So I do think that they were pretty much going to apply their military thinking to the Soviet Union. The only problem, of course, is that the Soviet Union is so much larger than the German army, and so much larger as far as territory goes compared to all the other operations that the German army attempted to do combined. And so the problem with the German operational thinking, or part of the problem, was that often they were able to engage their enemies in a piecemeal fashion, and the distances and logistics, although weren't perfect, were at least sufficient for the task at hand. You know, if we look at the size of Yugoslavia, for example, or the size of Greece, or the size of France, for that matter, which is the largest country that they invaded, none of those countries really match the scale and scope and size of the Soviet Union. And so I really do think that is an important aspect of the conflict to recognize, because it really doesn't matter how quickly your forces can destroy an enemy army, or how quickly your forces can overrun a territory of 100 to 200 miles in length, when the nation that you're trying to defeat is several thousands of miles in length. And so, you know, when it comes to the conversation of defeating Russia and the history of Russia, there's a reason why Moscow is located where it's at. It's part of it is because throughout Russian history, Russia itself had a lot of difficulty stopping enemy nations from invading it. And so their best course of action was to use space to their advantage. Moscow is located in a very unique situation where it's far enough from Europe so that any invaders that try to invade are going to have difficulties. It's also far enough from eastern parts of the world for making it difficult for someone to invade from that direction. Moscow is very far from a lot of different enemy threats, and a lot of that has to do with using the natural space to their advantage. And that obviously applies to the invasion of the Soviet Union by Nazi Germany. Another interesting thing that the Soviets did was that they changed the rail gauge. Actually, this was done by one of the Russian monarch leaders, and I actually don't remember their name. But comments below if you do remember their name. But the Russian rail gauge was built in the 19th century, early 19th century, well before World War I even. And the change in rail gauge was used so that any nation, any modern army that invades won't be able to use the rail gauge as easily, because they're going to have to use new trains, basically. And so definitely little subtle yet large strategic concepts like those, I think, ultimately play a big part in the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union, because they had to face this challenge heads on, basically. So unlike the Battle of France, where the Germans only needed about a 1 to 2 month period of fighting to knock out the enemy, and only needed to advance, let's say at most 500 miles, only 500 miles to knock out all the French forces. Here, the Germans are going to have to advance quite a bit of distance in order to destroy the Soviet Union. And so I think for these reasons, it makes sense that, since we're playing a strategic game, and we're really focusing on strategy more than anything else, we're going to have to throw as much weight as we can against the Soviet Union in order to defeat it. So yes, we destroyed the Soviet armies really well initially, but now we have to continue our momentum and keep putting pressure on the Soviets and force the Soviets back. And the sooner that we can encircle Moscow or even take Moscow, the sooner we can take Leningrad, the better. And we're going to do all this before the winter arrives. I'm definitely playing a long-term strategy with the Germans, or the German high command, and we're going to focus on playing the long game. And so part of that is to be as economical as possible with our forces. I don't want units suffering too many losses. Those that do need to take a break. And when the winter operations come around, I want to be ready to fight a much more logistically tight war, because the winter campaigns will have their fair share of problems for the German army. And we obviously want to neutralize the Soviet Union completely. So some objectives include taking the Donetsk industrial basin, right? This is going to be a major summer objective. This is pretty much the primary objective of Army Group South. I want all these regions, including Kharkov, Stalino, and even Rostov, all to fall to German hands by the end of the summer, within that 4-month time frame. And I think it can be done. At the same time, we want to put pressure on Moscow. Now, Moscow is obviously a controversial objective. Trying to take Moscow may or may not defeat the Soviet Union, but at least in the context of this game, it is worth a lot. And production points, it's still quite high. And if we do take Moscow, even if we don't neutralize the Soviet Union, it's going to be very difficult for the Soviets to recuperate if Moscow is lost. The only problem I see is that Moscow has a lot of defensive advantages. You can see that the forest terrain around Moscow helps the Soviet defenses quite a bit. Furthermore, the Soviets have a lot of towns and cities around Moscow, major and minor cities around Moscow, which allows for Soviet reinforcements to arrive at the front very easily. And so, obviously we're playing in hindsight, but we do know that the Soviets will receive Siberian shock armies at some point. So I think it's important to recognize that if we're going to go for Moscow and we're going to fight in such a clustered territory like Moscow, that we're going to have to be ready to engage some very large Soviet armies. So I do think it's important that we just recognize that taking Moscow has its values, but it's not easy to do. Still, I do think that even having units near Moscow has its advantages, because even if we don't take Moscow, just the fact that we're able to be so close to Moscow will put a lot of strategic pressure on the Soviet forces for the remainder of the war. And obviously, historically, we do know that a lot of fighting, well after the Battle of Moscow even, a lot of battles throughout 1942, most of which were Soviet offensive operations, were ones in which the Soviets were doing everything in their power to give Moscow some more breathing room. The risk of having Moscow fall was simply too high for them to ignore. So even at the Battle of Stalingrad later on in 1942, in the winter, the Soviets were still focusing most of their offensive power near Moscow instead of near Stalingrad, even when the Battle of Stalingrad was the major Soviet breakthrough that took place in the winter of 1942. So something to note, it's very fascinating to me how many of us throughout 1942 really focused the campaign on this in the southern sector of the front with Case Blue and the big breakthrough the German army had throughout that summer. But as far as manpower goes, combat power goes, one could argue that most of the fighting was actually more around Moscow and Leningrad than it was near Stalingrad. So a lot of ironies there, but definitely something for you guys to think about, guys and girls to think about as we continue on. But we're not really there yet. That's obviously going to be in a 1942 scenario if the campaign even makes it that far. Right now, our focus needs to be on really getting to Moscow, getting to Leningrad, getting to Stalingrad, etc. So pretty good stuff, I must say. The next big challenge, I think right now, the German army needs to think about is just kind of having these ideas in the back of our mind as we continue forward. Obviously, we're going to continue putting a lot of pressure on the Soviets. We're going to try to destroy as many Soviet armies, to pretty much destroy them before they can even retreat to Moscow. It's kind of the best way I see it. But in the meantime, our goal is really to overrun the Soviet army as it begins to make its withdrawal to the east. And maybe they can hold and fight, but I really want to destroy as many Soviet units as possible while simultaneously having my forces advance east. And I've learned through many playthroughs that the best strategy for the Germans is to continue moving their momentum eastward, because even if they're losing the battles, even if the German forces are losing these battles, if they can simply get around the Soviet forces, that's another way to destroy them. So with that said, we are going to start with the German production. It is the new month of July, so there's a production term. The Soviets already had their production, so now we'll do the German production. Production will be at 54, 55 actually, for the Germans, since we took Minsk. And Minsk is within the German sphere of influence. You can think of it as the German reconnaissance units entering the city of Minsk, and no Soviets were there to defend it. Most of our money throughout Operation Barbarossa will be spent on building up our headquarters for the Germans. So with that said, we're going to increase Army Group Center, OKH, Army Group South, and also Army Group A. Each one costs 10 production points. So we've already spent 40 of our 55 production points on simply headquarters and building them up to full strength. And going from there. The remaining 15, we can definitely spend on building up some new units, or kind of providing replacements to the units that have taken some damage. So I think, for example, I can build up the 55 mechanized corps, which costs 6 points. That leaves me with 9. And the remaining 9 can be spent, I think, mostly on infantry. And the reason why I want to focus more of my production on infantry than on armor is because the infantry, are cheaper, and I would want the infantry to take the hits first before the armor does. And I'm doing my best just to have as many, a good mix between 4 and 3 combat value units. And whenever I attack an area, I want to attack with at least 1 full strength unit and have it take the loss, while hopefully the other ones do not. And right now it seems to be pretty well balanced. I got a lot of strong combat 4 units here in the center, or here near not the center, but the southern part of the front. The Germans also get some reinforcements as well. And I want the units that have broken through, like the 9th Corps, 26th Corps, which I do believe took some losses. I want them moving forward as well. Something else to think about is what will be my primary strategic objectives right now for the operation, or better yet, what are going to be my short-term operational objectives? And I do wonder if I should blitz with Army Group A. I don't know if there's necessarily a need to, but the more I can put pressure on the Soviets, the better, obviously. And so, for example, I can deploy Army Group A to Cernauti, which is right over here. And since it's at full strength right now, it's going to have 2 hexes of command range, and basically allows me to command this entire cluster of Soviet units, German units, and actually have them push forward to destroy the Soviet pockets that we see here. Or not pockets, the Soviet armies that we see here, excuse me. I think I need more coffee, or I need more water, or something to really get this video going. Anyways, don't mind me. So that's definitely one thing to think about. You're going to see me really apply a operational strategy for the Wehrmacht, which is kind of like a leapfrog type strategy. And the idea is to pretty much use my headquarters in such a polyrhythmic way, where at any given turn, I basically have at least 1 HQ that's available to blitz. And the advantages of doing it that way is that I'm able to put as maximum amount of pressure as I can on the enemy. By blitzing, I actually can have several blitzes in a given turn, and actually have several rounds of unsupported combat. So I definitely think that there is some advantages to blitzing. So I'm thinking maybe Army Group A doesn't need to blitz, or maybe I don't even have to use Army Group A at all, although I think I should. And then have Army Group A just make some moves. I really do think I should try to blitz with Army Group A, but maybe I don't. Maybe instead I do a normal attack with Army Group A and just try to get as many units as I can to move further east and put pressure on the Soviet formations around here. And by doing that, I think we can say that we're going to be well on our way to destroying Soviet formations in this region. I also have OKH. OKH, of course, is unique in that it has strategic moves, but doesn't have direct combat support. But it has excellent air power support. So, Army Group North, for example, I can actually have it deploy forward and make a blitz and actually move as many units as I can to the east. And Army Group North is actually going to be the main player in the next turn. And I can pretty much move all the German units from Riga all the way down to Brest-Litovsk, since the command range of Army Group North will be 3. And I can move a giant wall of German units forward. These include maybe a river crossing over here, south of Mogilev, which is going to be an important junction for a river crossing. And then I can also, if I decide to blitz, I can even send units all the way around. And maybe I try to do that. Maybe I try to go and encircle Bryansk, possibly encircle Smolensk, attack the Soviet rear, and get my forces between the Soviet defenses that we see here and the Soviet defenses at Moscow. And also we'll be able to go and move north and put pressure on Leningrad. So the Soviets obviously are pretty well dug in, but man, if we can go around the Soviets, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. And not to mention, the railroad line from Veliki Luki is going to be in supplies. And I think in hindsight, the Soviets probably should have left a unit there, but they chose not to. So that was a bit of a mistake on the part of the Soviets. This very well could be another German victory. I really don't know, but I do think that the Germans should definitely make a move. So without further ado, we're going to activate Army Group North. We're going to start the command phase. All right, activate Army Group North and deploy it right there to Molodechno, right near the front line, basically. And I think next turn maybe. Maybe next turn we actually blitz with Army Group A, perhaps, right? And if we, maybe we can do another blitz with Army Group A, which will allow us to still have time to make another blitz later on in September. We also actually have a German reinforcement as well, an extra Panzer unit. And a good question would be to figure out where in the heck do I want to put an extra German Panzer unit for the next phases of the operation. Right now, Army Group South has 5 motorized / armored corps, 2 of which are kind of busy contesting the front right now. And then just a lot of infantry in the rear. And then here further north, we've got 3 that put a lot of pressure on the Soviets to the north. And then here in the center, we have about 3 more, it looks like, armored units. So a lot of units here in the center and the north, but the objectives are kind of split right now, as you can tell. And so I almost want to send one more to the center, actually, and maybe double down on the assault on Moscow. So since it is July, I can get this one more reinforcement, and we'll put it in Königsberg, and I can operationally move it with OKH, and then actually help it blitz further east, which is nice to see. So yeah, I think we have the option here of doing some serious damage against the Soviets. And then OKH we can activate as well, deploy to Brest-Litovsk, and we now have the option of having 2 forms of air combat support. The real question is, where do I want to support my air units? And I do think that trying to destroy the Soviet southern HQ here is going to arguably be the most important move right now on this turn. So maybe it's a bit of a gamble, But if I were to deploy Army Group A right now, it wouldn't obviously be helpful in any later operations. But if it means destroying the Soviet units in Zitomir, then it might be worthwhile. I could also try to use OKH as a way to launch a air assault across river crossing over here. But the only problem I see with that is that we don't really have any units in range besides our armor to do such a river crossing. So I'm probably going to do it in the Blitz phase. I do think Army Group North right now will be our Blitz HQ. So this HQ doesn't really have the command range in the Blitz phase to do anything, but we can still make maneuvers around the Soviets. And I realize in hindsight, we really should have had us, Soviets should have not abandoned Veliki Luki, but oh well, here we are. So that seems like a pretty good setup. Obviously, in the next turn, we won't be able to do too much, which actually may be fine if we're able to destroy the Soviets here in the south. So we're actually going to activate Army Group A, and I wonder if I even should try to blitz with Army Group A as well, although I don't really see that being all too effective. And so that way, we're actually going to send our air support airstrike right there from OKH to Vinica in an effort to destroy the Soviets there. I do think that's a worthwhile objective. And we could also send some panzers to Zitomir, but I won't. I'm going to send my strongest panzer that I have available right across the river. 57th and 14th Corps now moving into Vinica and putting pressure on the Soviets there. And hopefully we can destroy the Soviets right over there. Other units to move, well, we can do some OKH moves. Advance our infantry to Kiev will be definitely part of that. The 4th Corps can move, so that's 2. We can move the 52nd. Actually, the 52nd is actually in range of Army Group A, so there's no need to do a strategic move with that. We can move the 17th forward, so that's going to be 3. Wait, 3. Here's another one, Königsberg. 40th Panzer Corps will move forward. That's an operational move. So I think I moved 4 units so far. I need 2 more that I need to move. 2 more units that I need to advance. I don't really have any 2 extra units to move, actually. Unless I decide to deploy Army Group North further south. But I don't. Pretty much all the German units right now are in command range right now. I guess the last 2 moves I can do is move the 1st Romanian army forward, and then maybe move the 2nd Romanian. I believe that's the 2nd Romanian army. It's more like a militia. Move it by rail right over here, and just get it a little closer to Odessa. Or if I want to be extra careful, I'll send it to Constanta, although I doubt there will be a Soviet invasion from there. Something else I forgot to do, I just realized, is the Hungarian army will also participate in the invasion. Actually, that might be the best move right now. Oops. Get these extra Hungarian armies to invade, put pressure on the Soviets. So maybe instead of moving these 2 guys, I actually advanced the Hungarian army forward. And not let the Soviets over here do anything sneaky. And so, yeah, I'm going to move the second. So we're going to leave. Yeah, we're going to move the second Hungarian army forward, and then I guess we'll move another guy here, right there. Yeah, those are going to be my 2 extra moves. All right. Now for air battles. As far as air battles go, well, we have another airstrike that we can do against the Soviets in this sector. Not really sure against which unit exactly, but obviously I want to attack some unit. Not really sure yet. But we'll now focus on Army Group A and get its units to move forward. You know, the 44th can move forward. Better yet, we'll move the 49th to the south. And then the 44th, move the 3rd into here. 44th can move like that. We'll move the 55th here as well. And move in the 3rd, or the 11th Corps. We can also move the 3rd Romanian Army. I think we'll move it probably a little closer to Odessa. And move the 28th over there. And the idea here is just to put as much pressure as we can on advancing Soviet units. We can also, yeah, maybe we'll actually going to return the 11th. Move it here, and we'll move the 48th over there, actually. And actually, I realized we're going to actually move the 55th to the south, move the 11th back. The reason why I'm doing this is because I actually want to put as many combined arms formations as I can against the Soviet units that I'm trying to destroy right now. And the advantages of doing that is that it's going to be a lot harder for the Soviets to retreat if they decide to retreat. That's the nice thing. I realize I have actually one extra move I want to do. And I realized that we should definitely move up Army Group South, the HQ. I realized that's probably a good move. So we're actually going to do that. That's actually an OKH move. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 5. And then the last one was 6. And actually, you know, I mean, these Soviet rear units, I'm actually realizing that I'm pretty sure it has to be like this. And let me count that again. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have one more unit to move. Yeah, so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the first Hungarian army. I'm going to change their combat values a little bit. I guess since we're playing a historical game, I can't. I'm going to move the first Hungarian army there, and then the second one to there. There we go. And that's going to be OKH. Well, the first one is actually going to be supported by Army Group A, right? And that way we're able to put some strategic pressure on the Soviet armies that are cut off and pretty much deny their ability to retreat. That's the goal that we're trying to do right now. I definitely should attack with full strength, but oh well. Since we're playing the historical game and the historical setup, I can't really change the combat strength of the units participating in these battles. So yeah, this is looking good. Army Group South, I think it's in pretty good strategic position. And
now we can just get other units to move forward by Army Group North now. We can switch over to Army Group North operations. And now we're going to get these guys moving forward. So the 7th Army, 7th Corps rather, will move up. 46th Corps could attack right now, but I don't want to attack without any infantry support. And right now, at this point, I can send 3 units to attack, which is pretty good. I definitely want to get as many units as I can, especially the panzers, as well as the infantry. Get as many units as I can to march forward. So the 1st can go there. Actually, we'll use another unit. For that, we'll use the 20th. First, we'll move forward like that. And then, oh, yep, we've got the 54th Corps. That's going to move to the north. Get these guys to move forward. The 41st Panzer Corps, I wanted to see, we can't actually hit Tallinn from here. And so I want to put some pressure on the Soviets in the swamps. And I wonder if there's any pursuit fire in the swamps. We can actually read the rules real quick, just to make sure. Pursuit, production, rail lines, zone of control. We've got losses in combat. There's counterattacks. There's all kinds of stuff in this game. Here it is, pursuit fire. All defensive advantages due to terrain, such as double defense in force, apply to pursuit fire from the rear guard. Doesn't say anything about swamps. It says the firepower of a pursuing unit does not depend on its type, but on its relative speed, undercurrent terrain, and weather conditions. And so I do think that in swamp conditions, the speed is 1 for the panzers. So they won't be able to pursue all that well, given the conditions. So that's just something to think about. I can send the 56th Corps forward, but I'm pretty sure that the Soviets are going to be able to evacuate. I think what we really need to also take note of is just the possibility of the Soviets basically retreating through land. We don't want that Baltic front to retreat. So I'm actually thinking I can move the 56th Corps forward, maybe to Luga perhaps, and pretty much cut off the rail lines and deny the Soviets that opportunity to do anything sneaky. This guy up here. Well, I'm going to actually pull back the 2nd. And we're actually going to have this unit attack here. And I'm going to pull back with the 24th armored unit. Put it to Vitebsk there. And this way, we have as many units as we can right now, just moving. Again, like I said before, the goal here is to move mass to the east. That's the real goal. We got a lot of full strength infantry over here. Trying to see if there is. Oh yeah, no, we're looking pretty good. The 56th Panzer Corps. I guess what we can do, put him there at Vitebsk to support breakthrough operations. And the only other unit that I'm really sending to the far north is going to be the 41st Panzer Corps, which I really don't think is a great idea, frankly. Really not all that impressed by that maneuver. Maybe I should just leave it right there. Nah, we'll go with the original plan and put some pressure. Maybe we'll get lucky and get some hits on the pursuit. But as you can see, there's really not that many German units that are being left behind. All our units are trying to move forward. And I actually realized that we can actually encircle a Soviet unit here if we actually attack down there. And that actually might be a worthwhile target. So I do want to cut off another Soviet unit if I can. Maybe we'll attack like that. Obviously, we're not really in a position to take Odessa yet, but I think we can still do some pretty nasty damage against the Soviets. Maybe this unit is starting not to. We can pull it back. Actually, attack there. All right. I think we're pretty much done with the German turn. Pretty easy turn, I would say. And the main focus is just to get that momentum to the east, especially here in this big gap that the Soviets left for us. And so as far as combat goes, believe it or not, Army Group North has really no major battles. So I think what I'm going to actually do, since I'm not really seeing any major battles by Army Group North, I'm actually going to use the first German corps to attack there. And then we'll do an airstrike and see if we can just destroy that unit. Might as well. And all the other panzers, I want them to move forward because they don't really have to participate in any major battles. I want them to really focus on moving, advancing. Really, that's what I want to see. Yeah, I think our battles here are pretty much done. There's going to be pursuit fire here. Since our German unit right here, east of Riga, pulled out. Let's see what the Soviet unit is. So it's only one, and it's an infantry, so it's going to be too slow to pursue the 24th Panzer Corps that we had to pull out from there. So there was no pursuit fire there, but we will have a new battle there. So now I think we can actually do some combat. 3 HQs are activated right now. We are busy on this turn. So let's do it. We'll start the fighting in the north. Let's see what we can do here. Battle in the north. Attackers roll, scoring no hits. Next, we got the battle over here. This city is called Polotsk. Battle Polotsk will do. German airstrike gets the fire, scoring 1 hit. Soviet defenders roll, scoring 1 hit as well. And now the German infantry roll, and they score no hits. We also did the battle east of Riga here. It's not a river crossing. No hits on either side, but I think we're well on our way to cutting off that unit, so that's good. I also should mention that the Soviet units right now over here are completely cut off because we now have Riga, we control the port, therefore the naval port, therefore we control the naval waters of Riga. This port further north is basically ineffective. Other battles to do. Let's do the battles in the south here. We'll start with the Hungarian battles, see how they go. 1 Soviet tank, no hits. Now the 12th Soviet army rolls, scoring 1 hit, ouch. And we'll have the Axis roll, starting with the 2nd Hungarian army. No hits. Against, there will be no hits here because they have double defense anyways, and we only have 1 die by the 1st Hungarian army. I'm just glad that the 1st Hungarian army wasn't destroyed in their attack. All these other units that are cut off, I don't really need to deal with them as far as battles go, because they will inevitably get cut off at some point. The next battle we'll do is going to be the battle west of Zhytomyr, right over here. It does have combat support. It's going to be the 37th Soviet Infantry. They score no hits. Now the Germans roll. We got a Panzer there. Start with that. No hits. Finish off with the infantry. Boom, 2 hits. Pretty good. Now for the main battle, which is the Battle of Vinitsa, and this is where the Soviet HQ is located. The Soviets had the 19th Army defending the Southern Western Front's HQ. Or I said Southern Western, I just meant to say Southern Front. German air power rolls. Boom, 2 hits, nice. Soviet defenders roll, no hits. And now for the German panzers, see what they can do. They score 2 more hits, boom. So they destroyed the Soviet 19th Army, and the Soviet HQ there looks extremely vulnerable now. We'll do the next battle right here near Sarnauti. Soviets have the 7th Mechanized Corps defending. Let's see how much damage they can do. They score 1 hit against the 49th German infantry, mountain infantry corps. Panzers roll, infantry roll, then boom, they score 2 hits. Nice. Destroying the 7th Mech Corps. And then I think one of our last major battles is Battle near Jassy. Strong Soviet defense. We have another Soviet Mech Corps there. It is the 2nd Corps. We got airstrike. Boom. The air power just decimates it with 2 6s. And that really destroys the Soviet sector over here. I wonder if we should have blitzed or not. We can deactivate Army Group A. Not to worry, because we are blitzing in the north, so that will provide us blitz combat in the south, which is nice to see. And so we're going to do a few more battles. We'll do this battle over here near Odessa. The 18th Soviet Army scores no hits. 28th German Infantry score no hits. We'll also attack with the 4th Romanian Army against the 2nd Cavalry Corps. Cavalry Corps scores a hit, ouch. 4th Romanian Army rolls, scoring 1 hit, but no support, giving the Soviets double defense. Therefore, the Soviets still stand, but they're pinned down, and it's only a matter of time before we cut them off, which is nice to see. So yeah, that pretty much sums up the southern operations. Now we can move on to the Blitz phase here in the north. So Army Group North is going to blitz, and we're just going to get as many units as we can to move forward. We'll start with the 12th German Corps moving north to Tartu. There is a gap in the German line here. In theory, the Soviets could retake Riga. So I'm actually going to send a unit there just in case, which means we have 1 less corps to advance to Leningrad, but you know, tis the nature of war and logistics, and I want to make sure we have a stable line to support the 41st Panzer Corps there in the north. We can also make some pretty nasty breakthroughs in this sector, and I think we should, definitely. Actually, I want these 2 units. 24th Corps can move down this southern corridor and go around Smolensk. Yeah, that looks really good. (47th), 1, 2, 3, like that. We also got to do some river crossings here. We're definitely going to do that. River crossing there. 13th Corps can move up. The 6th Corps will move a little south here. Just kind of protect the flank, I guess. There is a gap in the German line right now. 46th Panzer Corps. I think we can send across here. Now we'll do a river crossing with these 2 units right here. 26th Corps and the 39th Armored Corps. And then the last move we'll do is we'll advance the 40th Corps again. Oh man, that's it. That's all I can do. It's out of range. All right, that's fine. I think what I'll do, I'm actually going to pull back the 9th corps, and actually I'm going to have it attack all by itself right there. There is problems in this German advance because there are gaps in the German lines, especially in the north, it seems like. So actually this unit, maybe I cancel that, and we'll have it move to the north here. Maybe something like that. 1, 2, 3, yeah. But the only problem with that, of course, is that our river assaults, run into trouble as well. Of course, if the Germans, if the Soviets have a cavalry unit, they could go around and definitely cause some trouble to our advancing troops here in the kind of southern sector of the front. Although, I think if we keep some German HQs nearby, I think we might be all right. Definitely a bit of a tricky situation, I think, for the Germans. Maybe we actually pull back the 6th Corps, and we just have it right here at Brobruisk, just to secure the flank. And even if the Soviets do try to go around, they're going to have to break through there. If they really want to do anything awesome. And this seems like a much safer maneuver. And also OKH now is going to be deactivated as well. And what else? The only vulnerability that I'm really seeing right now is the fighting here in the north. These German units, these German panzers that are moving forward are really depending on this Velike Luki rail line. And it's still needs another 2 more units up north to kind of ensure that the rail line can be held. And I do see that as a bit of a problem. So I think what I might do is pull back to 47th Corps, actually move it 1 extra move up to the Valdai Hills, perhaps. Right. The 56th, which started in Vitebsk, we'll send it back and maybe move it near Rezhev, perhaps. And we still need 1 more unit to move forward. So maybe we actually move the 9th right over here. Which kind of begs the question, why am I trying 2 river crossings when I could really just be doing 1? Well, we know that the Soviet HQ is located right there, and it's definitely a juicy target. And I think it's one that's worth attacking for the simple fact that it's a juicy target, and putting pressure on it, I think, has its benefits. Maybe we actually pull back the 46th Corps here. Instead, we're going to move it right into there. And I think this attack is looking pretty good. I mean, there's a possibility that the Soviets have a cavalry unit, let's say in Leningrad, and they could cut off our rail lines, which would obviously be quite a pain in the ass, if you ask me. So maybe we leave the 47th Corps. Maybe we just leave it right over here instead, right there. So if the Soviets try anything sneaky, well, we should be in pretty good shape. So now we're launching a river assault now. We'll do that. We're launching Launching some river assaults, but they don't seem all that strong in my opinion. 26th Infantry Corps actually kind of wanted to support here. Maybe we just send one entire army that way, perhaps. That seems pretty reasonable if you ask me. I think it's pretty reasonable attacks. The only problem is that, you know, some of these river crossings seem a bit vulnerable, if you ask me, and I don't like the vulnerability. Damn, I'm not even sure where the 39th started, but I sure as hell know that it wasn't in range. I think it may have started here, actually. Maybe we just leave it there. You know what we'll do? We'll move the 13th here. 37th can attack right there. Then we have one more corps. Go 1, 2, 3 like that, perhaps. That seems pretty reasonable. Because we're leaving the possibility of a Soviet counter river crossing to be quite high. But I kind of want that to be the case. Okay. Yeah, and then maybe we're gonna send this corps actually right there. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Big attack on the flank, 2 units attacking here, 3 units river crossing there. The rest of the panzers are penetrating into Soviet territory, and we're trying to make sure that they all have a rail supply line. That's pretty good. Yeah, that seems pretty good. Yeah, so I think we'll leave it at that. And so we still got a few more battles to do. Army Group North, and it's not even in range for air support, but we'll just move it forward. Put it over here. And now we'll do all the unsupported rounds of combat. So the first one, we'll do another round here in the north. No hits. Battle near Smolensk. 22nd Army looks quite strong, scoring 1 hit. German panzers roll. Boom, we score 1 hit as well. Now we got the big river crossing over here. Unsupported combat. What are we up against? Pretty strong Soviet units. They score 3 hits and 2 repulses. So they're going to repulse 2 of our units. And this guy get repulsed. And then the remaining unit will take 3 freaking hits. It's not looking good at all. Not looking good at all there for the Germans. But the flank looks excellent, so I would say it's a bit of a touche. And then we got a few more battles here in the south to deal with, namely the battle here at Vinica. And we actually don't score any more hits. Holy crap. So that's going to sum up the German turn of river crossing here. Barely successful. The beachhead is vulnerable to a Soviet counterattack. But everywhere else, Soviet forces are looking in pretty rough shape. They don't have supplies over here. They don't have supplies over here either. A lot of Soviet units right now are out of supplies. So that's going to sum up the German turn for now. Soviets are very much still in the fight, but the road to Moscow looks bad, to say the least. So we'll see what the Soviets do. I wonder if the Soviets will just try to abandon this area, fall back to Moscow, which is probably what they will try to do. And we'll see about the situation in the south as well for the Soviets, because it's looking very bad, I must say. And then we will see what happens for the rest of the war. German invasion of Operation Barbarossa is going quite strong right now. And we'll see if the Soviets are able to fix the situation in any significant way. And we'll see if the Germans can continue their momentum forward, because they're obviously having their fair share of logistics. All the German HQs right now are just absolutely exhausted. So you can tell there's not a single one at full strength anymore. So we may even pass the next turn. So Germans nearly destroyed the southern front, but they're still alive. They still have a little bit of breathing room to evacuate. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope this operation is pretty cool. Hope you're enjoying it. Be sure to hit a like and subscribe, and definitely in the comments below, let me know what you think is going to happen next. Do you think the Germans are going to be able to encircle Moscow on the next turn? Do you think the Germans are going to be able to break through here in the center, or rather the Ukrainian sector? What do you think the Germans should focus on? And definitely let's get that conversation going, because this obviously is very analogous to the assault on Moscow, and analogous to that one moment where the German high command had to decide, do they want to go for Moscow, or do they want to make an encirclement near Kiev to the south, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing here. So without further ado, I'm going to end the video here, and definitely stay tuned for the next video, where we will play as the Soviets and see if the Soviets can do any adjustments to their defensive lines that are being flanked and breached right now, especially here in the north / center part of the front. The south is looking good, but really for how long? That's a real question, is for how long. The Soviets lost this turn alone. They lost 3 more units, which is really not too high, but it's definitely higher than what you would want it to be, right? Ideally, you lose no units in a war. So Soviet supply lines are definitely looking quite dire, especially here in the south. The Germans could very well start cutting off units if the Soviets aren't careful. So once again, thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.